Story 1. She tried to shift all the blame onto me, saying, "You didn't do this, that, or the other for me." These were things she never actually communicated. I refused to take the blame and responsibility for her actions. Story 2. She said she had to do it because she thought she didn't like sex, but it turns out she just doesn't like it with me anymore. Story 3. My ex-wife tried to blame me for her infidelity. She claimed I wasn't educated enough, which was nonsense. I hold a doctorate in chemical engineering. What she really meant was that I wasn't as affluent as the barrister she was involved with. Additionally, I apparently lacked the romance and ambition she desired. Strangely, when she learned he wouldn't leave his wife for her, she suddenly wanted me back. She even attempted to drug me to get me to sleep with her while we were separated. Turns out she has serious issues. I wish I had realized that before marrying her. I have since had to move to a different continent to escape her. Story 4. Phone photos were synced to the PC, and that is where I found the images she was sending to her boyfriend, who also happened to be her ex from years ago. When confronted, she denied having an affair, and when I showed her the pictures, she said, "What's the big deal? It's not like he hasn't seen me that way before." Story 5. I was told I drove her to it. I gave her no choice but to cheat. It was all my fault, and she didn't want to discuss her actions. She wanted to talk to me about my actions that led to her infidelity, but she would never admit to having an affair. It was all just confusion, anger, and blame shifting. She was completely ashamed that she got caught, not that she actually cheated. Story 6. I just assumed at some point you would leave me. Cheating on me with 2 different guys just accelerated that, didn't it? Story 7. My ex was straightforward about why she cheated on me with her boss. He earned a substantial income and offered her a comfortable stay-at-home mom lifestyle, which is what she desired. They have been married for 20 years, so I suppose it all worked out for her. Story 8. I was suspicious of my wife. She kept spending time with this man late at night, but when confronted, she said they were only working out together. In the end, she left me for him and claimed my jealousy drove her to him. They got married. Then a couple of years later, they got divorced and she tried to get me back. Story 9. An old girlfriend of mine engaged with someone at a party because he persistently urged her to. Ultimately, I ended the relationship and became more guarded with my emotions moving forward. Story 10. She found out during a night out while she was drunk that nothing happened. The next day when she was sober, she said, "I can't remember anything." Story 11. Monogamy didn't work for her, but it certainly worked for me. She also tried to blame her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder for getting bored easily. Story 12. After a 10-year relationship, I am fairly certain that she was at least emotionally involved with the guy she started dating a couple of weeks later. She tried to present a positive perspective on the breakup, while I just wanted to move on. I was always suspicious of the new guy. 2 years after our breakup, she expressed how emotionally invested she had been. She confessed that 3 months into our relationship, she had slept with someone at a party and swore to be the best partner that ever existed. Story 13. Not sure if it was an excuse. Our relationship was over anyway. No matter how people spin it, they cheat when the relationship is over. But wouldn't it be more fair to just tell the other person, "The relationship is over, so I am going to be with other people. Goodbye. Don't call me"? Story 14. There was a lot of blame shifting. It was because you were being distant. This is true. I was distant, but only after she admitted she was in love with someone else. Story 15. Not me, but this is what my mom said about her affair after 40 years of marriage. "I'm entitled to have fun, and I thought it would just be a fling." Story 16. I didn't even try to lie. I just received an eye roll and a huff. Then she started hoarding cash, which I suspected but somehow ignored. I was still a good dad, but I was drinking more, and depression became a problem. She began to constantly push all the buttons that she knew made me angry. She kept pushing my buttons with her words and actions until I snapped, giving her a chance to say she wanted me out of the house. I never hurt her, just scared her enough to think I could. But that was all the justification she needed. So there I was, a penniless fool, aware of her infidelity but too invested in marriage and fatherhood to confront her about it. Now homeless and paying court-ordered support for kids I rarely see. It's my fault, I guess. At least, that's what she tells everyone. It's funny, though. She refuses to speak with any of my family that she claimed as her own for years. Perhaps she feels guilty and worried that they might confront her betrayal? I don't know. It is what it is. Nowadays, just like the song says, I occasionally raise a glass or two to everything I lost because of her. Story 17. She denied and still denies that she cheated. She is married to him now. I am glad to be rid of her. She is an awful person. Story 18. I intentionally created a situation where she couldn't make excuses. I confronted her with what I knew and didn't ask her to defend herself. I simply asked her to explain why those things happened and to answer some questions. She attempted to avoid most of them, as she was trying to protect herself, but I received most of the answers I needed. I saw her recently, and she attempted to wave at me with a rather sad look on her face, but I ignored her. She is simply a narcissist who is upset that she can no longer control me. Story 19. She just told me she didn't want it to happen. She was seeing a coworker. Years later, she mentioned that there were a lot of drugs involved and she didn't know what to think. It's been 17 years, and I'm still not the same. Story 20. I just wanted to feel like a person again. I was struggling with my mental health and would ask for reassurance, which annoyed her. I had recently been fired and could no longer afford to see a doctor to refill my antidepressant prescription. This was also during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which she caught, and before vaccines were available, so she was quarantined for 2 weeks in a separate room. What frustrated me the most was that this man was notorious for having parties that she would attend, and he constantly wore his mask below his chin. I should have ended the marriage then and there, but I was in a weak mental state and rationalized why I probably deserved it and why she should be forgiven. Not that it mattered. She left soon after, leaving me with all the bills and taking her daily driver, which is still in my name and affected my credit. Be careful who you marry, and trust your instincts the first time. Story 21. You were too busy to pay attention to me. That was his excuse while I was working 2 jobs to support us. Story 22. I quote, "It's really none of your business. This is surprising because I cannot think of anything that could be more my business." Story 23. When I thought I knew, I confronted her. She said, "Of course not, I could never do that to you." Well, why were you dating him 3 weeks after we broke up? Story 24. Is it considered cheating if she asked for a divorce on Tuesday, filed the paperwork on Wednesday, and then went on a date with a colleague on Friday? She claimed that I gave up on our marriage, that we were just roommates at this point, and that she needed something more. I was the sole provider for 7 years until the stress of my job at the electric company led to my termination. I dealt with disconnections. It was the worst job I ever had, and I would prefer not to do it again. I struggled with long-term depression, and when I lost my job, I felt suicidal. Her response to this revelation was to tell me to fix myself. Story 25. My ex could not tell a lie, but when she didn't want to tell the truth, she would simply remain silent. I would ask certain questions, and if there was no response, then I knew. Story 26. Because the person believed I was having an affair, but I really wasn't. I was working 6 long days a week. Story 27. The wife didn't have an excuse because she didn't think she would get caught. She just sat there with a pale face, looking at the text messages about her infidelity. Even after the incident, she never really told the truth or offered any explanation. No real answers, and sometimes that's all life gives you. It's hard, but life goes on and you move forward. Story 28. I didn't get to live my 20s, as we got married too soon. I just needed some time for myself. Then I found out my time included being involved with the local bouncer, the daughter of the bar owners, the sheriff, and more. There was an emotionless apology when confronted with the evidence. I then got the bouncer fired and took the job instead. I still work it once a week to this day simply out of spite. Story 29. She didn't tell me she cheated. About a week after she cheated, she sat me down and told me I didn't do enough around the house, that I was overweight, that she wasn't attracted to me anymore, and that she thought I would be a terrible father. I was crying and begging her to stay, assuring her I would do anything and that I would change. At a certain point, I realized some of what she was saying wasn't true, and she was just trying to hurt me, which was bizarre. I don't know why, but I asked if she cheated on me, and she froze. When I asked again, she admitted it. Her excuses were that she was drunk and didn't know why it happened. I never really got a reason. I think she was incredibly indecisive, and when things started happening, she didn't make a decision and simply went ahead with it. We decided to try to make it work, and for 2 months, I did my best to do everything while she continued to treat me poorly. At one point, she mentioned needing to find a new therapist. I dug until she finally admitted her therapist fired her as a client because she found out my ex-wife cheated again, and my ex wouldn't tell me, making our couple's counseling useless. Story 30. You work all the time. You weren't there for me. I had enlisted to try to provide a better life at that time. We always do what you want. All you want is intimacy. Story 31. I wasn't having fun anymore because I stopped drinking due to being an alcoholic and losing my mother to health complications related to alcoholism. There were a couple of other reasons she gave, but that was the most unreasonable one. She went and slept with the person who bullied me as a child and teenager. I left her, and she continued sleeping with him, trying to rub it in my face. I moved on with someone new after about a year. She got pregnant by him and begged me to take her back because he left as soon as he found out. I said no. She stalked me for a while before I moved back to my home country due to health issues after a car crash. I haven't heard from her since, although mutual friends sometimes try to bring her up. She's all sorts of crazy, to be honest. I was blind to it before. Story 32. I believe that cheating is unacceptable, regardless of whether it involves a male or female. Confronting the individual is self-insulting. What do you expect from someone who has already cheated? Cheating is a pattern of behavior that has likely persisted for some time. It's in the past now. You cannot change what has already happened, and their words will not alter their actions or the pleasure they experienced. Nothing will change by confronting them. A silent exit from the relationship is a better approach. Story 33. Her borderline personality disorder influenced her actions due to her insecurities. She claimed that I am too attractive for her, which led her to kiss another man. She also mentioned that she believes I will cheat on her eventually, if I haven't already, so she feels it is acceptable and that, at least, she's honest about it. I had previously shared with her the experience of watching my father break down in tears when my mother cheated on him, emphasizing that I believe there is never a justification for cheating. Felt quite surreal, to be honest. Story 34. One of my friend's ex told her that he was doing it for her happiness, as the person he was fooling around with gave him a lot of cash, which he would spend on my friend. Story 35. She said it was because I wasn't religious anymore. She never admitted this to me herself, though. I found out when the friend she cheated with confessed. Story 36. Yes, I understand. It was all my fault that she had a girlfriend before we started dating while we were dating, and the same girlfriend during our marriage. It was my fault that I found out. Story 37. Mine was denied for a while until the evidence mounted. Then, there was no excuse given. She is a narcissist. I moved 3 hours away to be with him, and we ended up in court over custody of our son. I won. Story 38. You were gone. You know I have a high sex drive and need it regularly. For some context, we were both in Army intelligence, conducting unique missions for various individuals around the world. It was reasonable that we would be away for a week, a month, or whatever the needs of the Army required. The first time, I was admittedly away for 6 months. It still stung. After some soul-searching, I decided to forgive her, and we talked about it. We agreed to take a full battery of sexually transmitted infection tests for fairness. The next time one of us was gone for that length of time, we would discuss it and establish boundaries for what is acceptable. The second time, I was away for 2 weeks. We briefly discussed it beforehand, and she said she could wait that long. When I returned, our platoon sergeant was sleeping in the barracks because his wife had kicked him out. I thought there would be a funny story involved. There was. He and my girlfriend, also his troop, had gotten intimate while on duty, and they got caught. He was reduced in rank from E6 to E5, and she was demoted from E5 to E4. He ended up getting divorced, and she went on an extended deployment to Iraq to support Special Operations Forces work. I was told she proceeded to engage with every man in the group. I spent the next 7 years as a serial monogamist. I would be faithful, but the moment anything became serious, complicated, or messy, I would say goodbye. I discovered I was bisexual, which is cool, I guess. Story 39. You never paid attention to me. You paid too much attention to me. I felt smothered. I was worried you would hurt me. I never attacked her in any way, however. She had hit me aggressively once before. I wanted more attention from you. It was not a one-time thing. There were many other excuses. All just that. Excuses. Always to shift blame so she never had to take responsibility for her own choices, thoughts, feelings, actions, etc. I was working over 40 hours a week, earning most of our income while she worked part-time as a bank teller. She hurt her back and couldn't work more than that, but she wasn't too hurt to take her lunch breaks to meet other men. Mind you, just hurt enough that I had to take care of her and most everything at home for both of us while she lay in bed and messaged one of the men, sending him explicit photos. She constantly sent him money to buy things from his YouTube channel while I helped dig us both out of debt that she kept creating behind my back. In the end, she is just a user. The longer and further I have been from her, the better my life has gotten. Story 40. She did not offer any support. She became angry when I confronted her during a marriage counseling session. She was upset and embarrassed that someone else was aware of the situation. She seemed indifferent to my feelings. Story 41. I appreciate these posts that target a specific demographic, yet nearly half the comments are from the other group. People often can't resist making it about themselves. I sympathize with everyone here who has been cheated on. These stories are unfortunately too common. Story 42. I'm the woman here and way cheated. It was 2 years after he filed for divorce, which he solely wanted, and the process was still dragging through the courts. I figured 2 years was long enough to have my life on hold for a man who didn't want me, but he told the whole town that I was just unfaithful because I moved on 2 years later. Infidelity had nothing to do with the divorce. He finally came out. That was an interesting experience. Story 43. She wanted to be certain she truly loved me and cheated on me twice before being sure she loves me more than anything. Story 44. I put her in that situation because I wasn't meeting her needs. These were the same needs she never clearly communicated. She also mentioned that, since she is female, it's acceptable for her to make a mistake once or twice, but if I did it, it wouldn't be acceptable because it's different. This is an example of inconsistent reasoning. Story 45. A man I know, let's call him Dad, started talking to a woman from his past because he was in so much pain from his back that it affected his mental state, and his wife, let's call her Mom, wasn't giving him any attention. Story 46. I have heard it all. I love you like a brother. It's not you, it's me, and I need some space. They all mean she is unfaithful. Story 47. My ex was an alcoholic. She was in the stages of recovery, and when she relapsed, she blamed the men for sleeping with her, even though she would call them while I worked overnight shifts. It was frustrating. She had friends from Alcoholics Anonymous and just men in general dictating her actions. We are both in our 30s, and she slept with a 19-year-old who had previously molested his sister. It was a chaotic situation, and I'm glad it's over. The 19-year-old still contacts her to talk negatively about me and insults me, despite claiming to be bisexual. Story 48. The excuse was that I was always working. I work a 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. day shift with 3 days off a week and holidays off with pay. It's ridiculous to say I'm always gone. She is not employed and had the luxury of being a stay-at-home wife. I filed for divorce. I am a single man living my life with no children or unfaithful partner. She is nearly 40 years old, jobless, and has been living with her elderly parents for nearly 5 years after our divorce. Story 49. He assumed I was cheating because I attended work events or went out for dinner with colleagues and met their pets since I was going to be house-sitting. Story 50. She was kind and took the time to explain how the other relationship came about. She hadn't worked out a way to tell me because she didn't want to hurt me. Ultimately, I believe that the relationship between two people requires communication and effort from both sides. I wasn't perfect, and I think I would be different knowing what I know now. I don't think she's a bad person for doing what was right for her. I wish it hadn't been so painful for me, and I wish she had felt she could have the conversation about our relationship before she started another. But people and life are messy. We're friends, and I will always love and care for her. I try to remain grateful for the years we had rather than dwell on the end. An old friend used to say that a partnership should be measured by the happiness in it, not the tenure. Story 51. She admitted everything. We ended with an amicable divorce and shared custody, and neither of us asked for anything financially. We have 3 wonderful adult children. Story 52. Bipolar disorder can lead to manic hypersexuality, one of its most challenging symptoms to manage due to its potential to harm personal relationships. Others often struggle to recognize this symptom as a product of the disorder because they lack medical or scientific understanding. Supporting someone with this condition requires courage, love, and forgiveness. Unfortunately, some people do not provide support, instead labeling the behavior as unethical and blaming the individual, suggesting they are responsible for the disorder's consequences. This topic remains underexplored in public discourse, yet many express strong negative opinions regardless. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.